It was the scariest time of my life. Scarier than facing down Shaky Leg Mary, at least I assume so. Scarier than the ghost of the electrician that I had banished from the third floor, and even scarier than Hattie on her worst day. I was sitting in Miss Blair's diner, Frankie sitting across from me, as we waited for Miss Blair to bring us exactly what we wanted, even though we hadn't ordered anything. That was the great thing about eating at the diner. You didn't ever have to look at the menu because Miss Blair would bring you exactly whatever it was you were hungry for. I had been in here once with David and Carl and watched her bring out a T-bone steak the size of a chew toy for this guy that had clearly not been here very long. He had looked at her and said that he couldn't afford something like that. And Miss Blair had just put her hands on her hips and asked him why he had bothered coming in then. The guy had looked mesmerized, just eating his steak and paying his bill before shuffling out in a confused stupor. We had all laughed at him on that day, but it never occurred to me how strange it was that she always knew just exactly what you wanted. "Okay," she said, coming out of the kitchen with 2 plates. "I've got lamb chops for the lady with green beans and field peas, and I've got meatloaf with mashed potatoes, gravy, and hush puppies for the gentleman." I smiled as I unwrapped my fork. "It's wild how you always know exactly what I'm hungry for," I said as I took a bite of the meatloaf. It was perfect, exactly the way my mother used to make it, and I savored every bite like somebody might take it away from me. Miss Blair just laughed. "Well, honey, that's why people come in here in the first place. I'm never wrong, and it's always out fast." She bustled back towards the kitchen, stopping to grab a jug of tea so she could refill someone's cup, and Frankie took a bite of the lamb chops and made a noise that sent a warm feeling through my belly. These are so good. They taste just like the lamb chops my grandma used to make when I was a kid. I don't suppose that Miss Blair's was here before you went into the stairwell, were they? Frankie shook her head. "Nope. There was a diner here, but it was owned by an old guy and his son. The food was good, but they certainly didn't know what you wanted before you got here. I guess Miss Blair took over after they died or something." We chewed and swallowed and enjoyed our meal for a moment. Just as it began to feel a little awkward, I swallowed a mouthful of meatloaf and asked what the hospital was like before she went into the stairwell. She told me it was basically the same as it was now, just a little smaller. Back then, they only had 3 floors, and there wasn't a lot of the fancy stuff like they had now. The 3rd floor had apparently been weird back then too, but not quite as weird as it was now. People still went missing, and they'd always had ghosts, and she had only heard rumors about the stairwell before she became part of it. I still have nightmares about it sometimes. My little brother is a trooper, but I know I keep him awake a lot. Sometimes I just wake up screaming. I dream that I'm trapped in there again with the things that chase me or the things that hunt me. It's getting easier, but some days it's really hard to work less than 30 feet away from the door that seemed to have transported me 50 years into the future. I chewed some more and tried to think of what normal people talk about when they're on dates. Frankie asked me a while ago if I wanted to go to dinner with her, but then her brother had gotten sick, and her evenings had been spent giving breathing treatments and taking him to the hospital. That was okay. I'd been going to lessons at Grandpa's house and trying to avoid the usual diseases that wandered around the hospital on 2 legs this time of year. When she called to remind me a week ago that I owed her a dinner date, I had almost forgotten. I was glad she had remembered, though, because I'd been looking forward to it back when she had suggested it. Looking forward to it and petrified by the idea of it. Don't get me wrong, Frankie is a wonderful girl. She's kind, sweet, she can carry a conversation very well. The fact that she's also a knockout is beside the point. She's really gotten used to the modern conveniences that I barely think about anymore. she seems to really enjoy my company for some reason. That probably deducts points from her for poor taste, but I certainly appreciate it. I'm not going to go so far as to say I'm in love with her, but the idea of going out a few more times for dinner is certainly appealing. It had been a while since anyone had been interested in me, romantically or otherwise, and I'd be the first to admit that it was kind of nice to have someone to talk to. That's someone that's not just interested in having me tell them ghost stories. So, Carl says you're the resident ghost whisperer in the hospital. I shook my head. It was like she had read my mind. I don't know about that. I help out sometimes with stuff that's outside Carl's wheelhouse. John, I watched you go into the stairwell and come out with a little boy while talking to someone that I couldn't see. Carl says you helped him out with a big problem last year that he didn't want to tell me about. David claims that you exorcised the spirits out of the basement, and Mark says that you made the weird phone calls he was getting stop. Did you know we were getting those weird phone calls in my time too? They were coming from a different floor, but I suspect that it's probably the same thing. I'd have to have a talk with my so-called friends next time I saw them. Sounded like they'd been telling stories again, and I didn't want Frankie to think I was weird or something. Getting stuck in a ghost trap like she had for 50 years was one thing, but talking to spirits, communicating with the dead, that was quite another. I didn't want to get a reputation as a weirdo, so I generally kept my inquiries centered around my book. And it had worked so far, but it appeared that some of the people close to me had noticed too, and were telling other people about my exploits. Well, look, it's not as if I go looking for them. They just seem to be drawn to me somehow. I feel bad for them sometimes, so I help them out of a tight spot. Some of the ghosts in the hospital really aren't all that bad. I like to help them move on sometimes when I can. It's for the best for everyone. Frankie smiled as she glanced at her plate, which was surprisingly empty. I didn't mean to make it sound like you're a weirdo or anything. I thought it was kind of neat. It's always nice to have a friend who helps out when things go bump in the night. I laughed, about to tell her that we had both probably had our fair shares of encounters on the spooky side, but that's when my cell phone rang. I jerked up like someone had touched me with a live wire. I'd meant to silence that before we got to the restaurant. I fished it out of my pocket to do just that, but that's when I noticed that Carl was calling me. I checked my watch. It was about 9 o'clock at night, and it was my day off. There should be no reason for Carl to have to call me, unless something weird was going on. I sighed and answered, giving Frankie an apologetic shrug. I'm sort of busy right now, Carl. What's going on? Thank God. I need you to come down here to the hospital ASAP. There's something going on in the OR. Carl, if you need some help getting homeless guys out of the emergency room, then you gotta call somebody else. I just work the switchboard. I can't come in and help you. It ain't that. That's not what I'm talking about. And as if to accentuate the point, I heard a sound like someone throwing a stool through a window. There was a metallic clatter, a breaking of glass, and I could almost hear Carl wince over the phone. What exactly is going on? I think, Carl started. Then he seemed to shake himself and gain some confidence. It's Shaky Leg Mary. It's the anniversary of her death, and for some reason she's decided to tear up the OR. It's never been this bad, kid. Usually she just makes a lot of racket and then goes about her business, but this time it seems worse than it's ever been. I know it's your off date. I know you're probably out on your date with that cute gal from the desk, but could you please come and help me with this? I'll pay you if I have to, but if admin comes in Monday and sees the state of this OR hallway, I'm probably going to lose my job. Swiped a hand across my face. Whatever I felt about it, I couldn't let Carl lose his job over ghosts. Told him I'd be on my way in a minute. Then I hung up the phone and looked at Frankie. I'm really sorry. Carl needs me to come to the hospital for a minute. He says it's an emergency. She told me that was quite all right, and that's when I had a crazy idea. Why don't you come with me? Really? Frankie asked. She looked hesitant, but also interested. Maybe she had heard about what I did from those friends of mine and was curious, or maybe she just wanted to see what it actually was. Either way, as I paid the bill and found her beside me, I realized she was coming, whether I wanted her to or not. We pulled up to the hospital 20 minutes later, and I waved at Thomas as the two of us headed for the OR. It's bad enough that I have to cover for you so you can go on a date with your relief, but do you have to bring her here and rub it in my face? Frankie tried to apologize, but I was in a hurry. I wanted to get this done before it got too late. Carl was waiting for us at the door, and he looked relieved. Thank God! She hasn't wrecked anything expensive yet, mostly just throwing around beds and chairs and things, but it's only a matter of time before she smashes something important, like a surgical laser or one of those breathing machines. See what you can do to make her calm down. If not, I don't know how I'm going to explain this to the higher-ups. I told Frankie to stay here, and I went into the OR on shaky legs of my own. Shaky Leg Mary was no minor apparition, no Hattie or prank-calling ghost who could be set right with a few words. She was old, she was angry, and she was going to be a pain in the ass. I walked in and found her tossing things around, just as Carl had said. I'd never actually seen Shaky Leg Mary, and looking at her made my bones hurt. She looked like the crooked man from the children's story, and it made me wince every time she went flying around on those smashed and misshapen legs. She turned to look at me as I came in, her eyes full of anger and hatred, but as she came forward, I put a hand out, and when I touched her, everything changed. I'd expected her to rip me limb from limb, but what I hadn't expected was to be looking at a mostly intact woman sitting on an OR bed in a paper gown. Her right side was crunched in, her legs were bent up like cheap accordions, and her face was awash with blood. She'd probably once been beautiful, but her skin was craggy and her hair was unkempt. The streets had not been kind to her, and she glared at me as if expecting me to scold her. What do you want? Why are you people always coming in? I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I tried again, hoping to do a little better, but still sounded like my throat was full of sawdust. I came to take you to the other side. I figured you'd been here long enough and were probably ready to go. Aren't you tired? Seems like it might be time to pass on. Maybe get some rest. I expected her to get angry, but when she smiled, it took years off of her. Shoot, I was waiting for one of you to come get me. I think maybe I scared too many of them away, but you don't seem scared of me. Maybe that's all I was waiting for, was someone to really see me. I've puttered around this old hospital long enough. I think I'm finally ready to go. If that's what you want, ma'am, I'll be happy to take you to the other side. I walked out of the OR with her on my arm, and Carl and Frankie followed us to the stairwell, where the red-clad orderly was waiting. Well done. Your ability to calm them is impressive. I think soon I'll have to find another job with you around. He took her into the stairwell, and as the door closed behind them, it was like a final nail going into a coffin. Frankie and I walked out of the hospital a few minutes later, Carl explaining to his boss how a raccoon had gotten in and pushed a bunch of things over. So this is what you do at the hospital? Receptionist by day, ghost hunter by night? I shrugged. I guess so. Sometimes it feels like I do a lot more for the hospital than I even know. She didn't say anything else. She reached out and grabbed my hand, and the two of us walked through the garden and didn't say much for the rest of the evening. As far as first dates go, it had gone pretty well.
Good evening, everyone. It's me, Dr. Plague. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's show. If you think you might like a little more spooky in your life, then please feel free to click on one of the videos we have up here. Maybe look at one of the playlists if you're trying to get caught up. I know, there's so many videos on the channel. There's so many series that are going at the same time. Sometimes you just need a little refresher course, and I gotta say, I always enjoy the views. If you're not subscribed, feel free to hit that subscribe button. Maybe hit the bell so you don't miss anything. We upload a lot on this channel, so you won't want to miss a single story as they come out. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click on the Amazon link down there. There's quite a few books in my Amazon account. You can have a look, and if you'd like a signed copy, get up with me through email, and I'll be happy to work something out with you. Also, there's links to my Patreon, and you can become a member on the channel if you'd like your spooky a little bit early. Patrons and members on the $5 tier get their videos 12 hours early. That's in the morning as opposed to in the evening. Patrons at the $10 level also get a signed copy of my book anytime I write one. Speaking of my patrons, you should see them appearing right now. Just wanted to take a minute to say how much I appreciate all of you. Patrons, subscribers, however you give to the channel. I really appreciate everything you do, and it truly touches me that you have chosen to support the channel in this way. Well, that's enough for now. Till next time, Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.